and thank you everybody for coming. Good day, wherever you are joining us from. Welcome to the Engage Digital Leader or Engage Digital Leaders session. Today we're going to look at not just how to lead digital transformation, but how to use digital as a tool for better leadership and management. So let's dive right in. There'll be time for questions and interaction. I know Lori will be monitoring the chat channel, so if you want to send anything through that, I'm happy to pause and talk about whatever comes up. Let's keep it as interesting and engaging for everybody as we can. So here's the reason why I've put this out there. This is actually a slide that comes from another session that I do frequently. So if I've met any of you virtually or in real life through speaking, you might be familiar with this. But this was a finding from Harvard Business Review a little over a year ago. So essentially they said was when organizations are strong in both digital management and digital leadership, they have revenue growth of 10% or more than their peers. And what leads to being strong in those areas tends to be the presence of a digital coach and having a clear vision for where the organization and the leadership of that organization are going digitally. So a lot of interesting insight behind this, but it's not just, hey, for the sake of better adoption, the leaders and managers should adopt, but really for the sake of organizational ROI. And it also speaks to this goes way beyond buy-in, right? There's a lot of leaders who have bought in to digital change, whether that's implementing a CRM package like Dynamics or Teams or a Google application, who knows what it is. But buy-in just means I approve the project, I've bought in that the organization needs this. This is actual adoption. In fact, the way you can think of this is some people refer to people who are very digital first, who are very comfortable with digital, which tends to be younger people, as digital natives, right? It's as native to them as using the alphabet to communicate with people. It's just a fundamental part of who they are. And that's what this article meant by digital management and digital leadership. It's not just buy-in, it's a tool that is used to become a better manager, to become a better leader within an organization. And it's not just nice to have, it's absolutely bottom line changing the game for some people. So that's the topic I want to talk about today. And it's interesting because when I'm coaching clients, I'm always surprised at how far to the extremes of balance they tend to vary. And here's what I mean by that. On the one extreme, you get what's more typical in my world, because I work with a lot of organizations that have been around for a while, are pretty large, not necessarily huge, but kind of mid-sized organizations, and that have some history. And so often it's either we don't need digital, we've never needed it before, that hasn't impacted our workplace that much, or kind of second cousin to that, it's, well, the organization needs digital, but that's a frontline tool. That's for the people. I'll approve it, I'll buy into it, but I'm the leader. I don't need digital to lead. So that's kind of one extreme we get. But we also do get the other extreme, which is we're all in. Digital is for everything. We communicate like crazy with digital. These are the organizations that tend to be younger, newer organizations, or where younger people might have risen to the top sooner. Not always, but just as a general trend. And what you find is there's almost an overuse of digital. They're replacing the human touch with digital, and they're often making horrible mistakes around where and how they communicate in a way that can be really feel shaming and humiliating to their employees and colleagues if they're not careful, and it creates a fearful adversarial culture. So on the one hand, you have companies who are kind of 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out of the door, and since everyone's not in, it can't really fully take root, and it's not really transforming the organization. And on the other hand, you have people who have tried to replace what's really important to us as humans with digital. And really the best balance of those things is saying the human touch, absolutely critical. Don't replace it, but go broader and deeper as leaders because you have digital than you could if you didn't have digital, right? So use it as a way to augment those great emotional intelligence, communications, and connection tools that you've harvested as a leader throughout your career, and also make sure the front lines is adopting it as well. So that's what we're going to talk about. And it's interesting because there are boundaries around that you have to set up as well. And we even do a separate session on that Lori and I were just talking about maybe scheduling in the future. So quick introduction to me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeff Abels. I run a company called C5 Insight. We kind of focus on this whole idea of digital people engagement, whether it's customers or employees. So on the technology implementation side, we have a practice, but also on the coaching and business advisory side, we have a heavy practice there as well, and do a lot of the planning and stuff like that. So I geek out on it. I think this stuff is really cool. I've loved it ever since I started pretty soon after college. I was in an organization called Young Life, and found that a great organization, but I was not a fit. But where I did fit well was helping these awesome people first people use digital to create better relationships. So everything's kind of grown for me from there over, oh gosh, 20 plus years now. And here's kind of the personal side, right? Here's why we all exist, why we do what we do. I love what I do, but I also do it to create this great family. So my wife and I are empty nesters now. Both of our daughters are married. We have great sons-in-law. I love hanging out with those guys. We love to, in our empty nest years, spend time drinking good wine and riding a motorcycle whenever we can. And Verdi has just joined our little home village here to keep us company in our empty nest. So she's our home dog. There she is in her COVID bed right next to me. That's where we work all day long, and she's literally just to the left of me most of the day. And our biggest surprise is the new member of the pack there. That is Theodore Evergreen Tremolini, our youngest daughter and her husband's son. He's about 3 months old now, so excited for them to visit in about a month or so. So I've told you a little bit about me. Tell me a little bit about you, just so I can set this up a little bit and we'll all know more about who's coming. Lori, if you could pull our full first survey up, that would be good. Describe for me your role in your organization. So just real quick, one selection, and I know this is not a perfect fit for everybody. You might say it doesn't quite fit, but just which of those 4 roles best describes you? And I know you're probably multitasking, many of you are, but take a second just to answer the poll real quick, just so we can get to know our little audience today, and you can get to know each other and who else is on this call with you. Lori, when it looks like they're done, you can pull up the results and share them with us.
All right, fabulous. We got about half of our audience that has voted, so let's just give it a couple moments here and get all of your responses. Okay, let's go ahead and close, and I'll share those results out with the group. So looks like we have 20% at senior manager level, 60% the majority at manager level, and then 20% IC, individual contributors.
Cool. So some people are trying to change themselves, others probably trying to influence the people maybe above them in the hierarchy. Awesome, great mix. Glad you guys are all here. Pull up our second one if you can. Just tell us more about what department. I know these may not precisely fit, but of these different departmental titles we've put up here, which one of these most closely describes what your day-to-day work looks like? And there's an other category there at the bottom. So if you say none of those are quite a fit, or I'm a senior manager and I have responsibility for multiple ones of these, you can drop a checkbox into that other category for us.
And it looks like, Jeff, that I might have missed the other category. So if you have an other, you can definitely comment and I can share that with the group as well.
That's
all
fine.
Right, let's go ahead and close and we'll share those results out. And we had about 33% marketing or sales and the rest IT or operations.
Cool, all right, got a big split there. And then last question, tell us about how COVID has influenced your digital. So in the last 3 months, are your leaders more digitally engaged, less digitally engaged, or about the same? Or if you're one of those leaders, you can answer on your own behalf.
I think this is a great question that I'm looking forward to seeing the results on, because I think we know. Let's go ahead and close it. Thanks for voting. 100% more digitally engaged, Jeff.
All right, no surprise there. So the good news and the bad news, right? Our world is transforming and it's accelerated how we're getting into a lot of these things, but we're stubbing our toes a lot in the journey as we try to do it. So hopefully we're gonna learn some things together. So what I want to offer up today is this: 5 ways to use digital as a leadership and management tool. So we're going to walk around each of these 5 different things, drill into them a little bit. I'm going to give some examples, hopefully some good takeaways for you, maybe some topics for conversation. So 5 things we found have really helped leaders and managers And I'm focusing a little more on the sales leadership side, just because this tends to be more of a CRM oriented group. So sales, marketing, customer care types of leaders, but certainly any kind of leader can benefit from these principles. So the first thing is knowing your why. And here's what I mean by that. For us as an organization, about 70% of the projects we engage in are what we call rescue projects. It doesn't mean the project is completely off the tracks, but it just means that there's something broken about how things are working out. It might be that it's not getting adopted well, or the technology is not configured in a good, concise way, or there's a lot of negative feedback, or any number of different things. What I can tell you from handling lots and lots of rescue projects is, in nearly 100% of the cases, among other things, not the only thing, but among other things, this is an element that they are missing. So almost all the time it's there, because really it's easy to jump into any digital workplace initiative without really knowing the why. And if you don't know why you're going somewhere, you don't really know where you're going, right? You might have this general sense, but you kind of get down the path a little bit, and all of a sudden things aren't working out quite the way you thought, and all of a sudden you realize there are a lot of different people who thought a lot of different things and had a lot of different expectations on where this project was going. So when one financial services company was struggling after 3 years to get traction on their project, they took the time to ask a very simple question. Why are we really trying to get this, in their case, CRM project done? And as the answer began to emerge, it led to some really interesting changes for them. And the first and possibly the most significant in terms of changing things, but subtle at first, was they renamed the project. They said, look, let's stop calling this the CRM project. Let's call this the customer engagement project. And at the root of that was this transition you see here at the bottom. They started to realize that when we're treating this digital thing we're trying to do as a technology-focused project, we tend to just be wanting to get technology done. We want this to be a business-focused project. We want this to be about, in this case, customer engagement. We've worked with others who, depending on what they're doing, have been more employee experience or employee engagement or something like that. All of those are fine, but they said, let's start with a name change to say, let's stop thinking about a piece of technology and own that maybe it's the right one, maybe it's not. What is it that we're trying to do? And so with that, they said, let's shift this from focusing on technology to focusing on our business. Who are we and what are we trying to get done? And then they made some other changes. They said, look, this needs to not be IT owned anymore. Good IT people, good IT department, but they looked at it and said, who are the people that this really serves internally? Well, that's sales, marketing, and their customer service group. So they said, these are the owners, not just the owners who are listed on a org chart or a project definition or charter somewhere, but actually owners in terms of who approves the budget, who approves the functionality, who is engaged in working with whoever it is that's implementing this for us. And yes, it's IT supported. Absolutely need to have strong IT support, but it's owned by the business first. It's supported by the technology group. Absolutely was a game changer for them. And I can tell you that's representative of many, many others that we've worked with. IT owned, IT approving the budget. It has been rare that we've been engaged in projects that you could describe as that were ultimately successful. They also had this mentality of, this is a tool for our reps, right? We just want to make it so good and our reps just want to use it. And it's kind of our gift as leaders to give to our reps to hopefully drive their satisfaction and productivity. And as they evaluated this, they said, no, yeah, it's for our reps, sure, but it's also for our managers, it's for our leaders, and it's for our customers too. So one of the things that kind of were responding to when they said it's a tool for reps was pushback that you hear in projects like this a lot of times. Hey, this is Big Brother, my leaders are watching me. It's kind of creating this accountability that I don't want to have. And they finally said, you know what? That is part of what it's doing. And not the Big Brother in a negative sense, but it is a management tool. It is a leadership tool. It is part of what we're going to use to help manage the people who work for us. It's part of what we're going to use to make better leadership decisions about what our forecasts are and what we're going to do. So we all just need to own that together. Yes, it's a tool for users and reps also, but some of our users are going to be the leadership of this organization, and that's important. And by the way, because this particular financial services provider was naming the project this way, they said it is also a tool for customers, not necessarily one that they will use, but it's one that should be benefiting the customers, and we should be putting that thought central to everything that we're doing. They also moved from this unmeasurable amoebic something into a solid set of metrics that they were constantly looking at. Metrics that the frontline users help to develop, metrics that managers help to develop to manage their teams. The CFO herself had her own set of metrics, and I can tell you that by her starting to look at those regularly and saying things like, I need to look at these pipelines and understand what is going on with them, all of a sudden, everybody in the organization was taking what they put into this system much more seriously because it was being used to make business decisions. And even satisfaction metrics around, here's how we did last year, let's measure again next year, let's see where we improved, let's see where we've fallen off, let's see where there's more interest in doing new things that no one was talking about last year, let's continue to drive all those metrics up. Because what gets measured gets managed. So they started to measure a lot more inside of this and around this. And kind of along the lines of everything we've been talking about, but their specific words, and I found these insightful, was they said, we have been technology guided. We want to find a trusted coach now. And when we dug into that a little bit, they said, yes, we've been technology guided, sometimes by our IT group, sometimes by external groups, but they tended to be technology first groups. So both might have super talented people, both might do a great job of listening to us and doing exactly what we say, but neither was talented at saying, what you're asking for is not what you should be asking for. You're asking the wrong questions. They needed someone who could really come alongside and say, like a Sherpa, right? I'm going up a mountain that's treacherous. I need someone to be a partner with me in getting to the top of this mountain. Lead me when I need leadership, follow me when I don't, be alongside me for this whole thing. But they also said one other thing I found interesting, and that was we have been relying on the technology itself to guide us. We have been looking at Dynamics 365 in this case and saying, oh, here's how it kind of works out of the box. So let's try to change our business and our processes to work that way. And they kind of realized there's actually this happy point between those that they were missing. And they were starting to lose themselves in this thing of trying to form their business around a product instead of forming a product around the business. So the technology still influenced them, but it was through a trusted coach that they could depend on and trust to work better together. So that was the first thing, really figuring out how to know your why as a leader. What is the why? Why are we doing this together? And then starting to use this to engage a team, right? Great leaders always engage their teams. They engage them in setting the digital plan. Remember, Harvard Business Review said they have a clear digital vision, but also using digital to help advance that plan and advance how they engage with the team. So what does that look like? So leaders tend to, when they think of digital at all as a leadership tool, they often think of it as it's a tool for broadcasting, right? I am a leader, I need to get my message out there. But you guys know the old axiom is that the good Lord gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them in that proportion. The same is true of digital. So how? How are good digital leaders doing this well? Well, one of the first things they're doing is metrics. Hey, all these digital tools they have, they're tracking metrics. They've got information in them, and metrics are a great way to listen to your people. So CRM in particular can be used to set goals, whether you're adding other tools to it or not to do measurements. CFOs can pull things out of those. But along those lines, and as you see in this slide here as well, don't just look at the metrics as a way to engage the team, but respond to them. So this sample here with Allie Jameson looking at a metric and kind of commenting on it and starting a discussion, a digital discussion around it, paving the way, leading the way to the whole group starting to say, this person is looking at things that are going on in the organization this way. I'm going to look at things going on in the organization this way too. Leading by example, absolutely critical. Excel. Look, good digital leaders never force people to retype stuff into Excel to make it easier for them as leaders to review information or any other application for that matter. And there's really no excuse for it anymore. There are so many ways to help your team out by not making them rekey things, by adopting the tools they use as a leader so that they don't have to rekey things, or by setting up the right of many different integration options. So if you do have data coming from multiple places, it can be pulled together in one place. It's no longer cost prohibitive to do that. It's pretty straightforward. Third thing that we see a lot of digital leaders doing well as they engage their teams is just asking them. Right now, people are hungry to give their input, right? Both of these little things that literally come from a presentation I sat in where several digital leaders were presenting from regular business to business businesses in the marketplace on things that they're doing. And one of them said, look, we're asking things like, we're doing happy hours after work, but they're digital happy hours nowadays. So we're asking people, what do you want to do in these? How do we connect with each other and express our humanity in a way when we're limited in how we can do that? And even asking things about, yes, we're getting the government go ahead that it's okay to return to work. Help us understand how you feel about returning to work, because a lot of people have really legitimate and maybe not even entirely legitimate, but have fears and concerns about being with each other, and they want to be heard and they want to have an opportunity to have input into that. And great digital leaders use these tools to listen, to just ask questions, engage, and listen with people. And the last of them on this page is this. I was coaching the CEO of a regional bank, a relatively small bank, a couple hundred branches. And one of the things he said he likes to do is he likes to send a personal greeting card to everybody on their birthday. He has an assistant who once a week pulls a list of all the birthdays together, puts together essentially the cards. He'll kind of sign them and maybe write a little personal message, and out it goes. And he asked, hey, should I replace this with a digital engagement instead? Should I put something out on one of our little internal social digital channels and not do the card anymore? And he was skeptical about that. And the answer was absolutely not. Do not replace the human touch when you have the time, bandwidth, availability, financial ability, whatever it is. Don't replace that with something digital. Don't destroy the human touch. Don't lose the human touch because of digital. But what we did say was, would you like to magnify the impact of that personal card you're sitting 5 times? Well, how do you do that? It's simple. Combine it with an online comment where everybody can see, right? So, Lori's on the phone with me today, and if I were Lori's CEO, getting a personal card from me would probably feel like a warm and fuzzy and nice thing. Hey, I'm cared for, that's nice, I like that personal reach out. But what if I'm on an online channel like Teams or Yammer or something else, and there's a birthday wish there, and the CEO comments underneath that and says, if you want to imitate a great person or organization, you should imitate Lori. She has been here for a long time, and she is an inspiration to all of us. How much more impact has that had because Lori got to see it in front of all of her peers than just the card she got? She got the personal touch, but she also got this digital touch as well. It can absolutely be a force multiplier for improving the depth of your relationships within an organization. And of course, it should always be done in authenticity. That's kind of what we talked about with the why. Now, when a manufacturer had thrown a huge budget at every digital tool their customer-facing people could imagine and had almost no measurable return, they decided to take a more strategic approach. Remember, we're talking about engaging people. So first of all, they got their entire team involved. They got a representative group involved in facilitated sessions, and then they did electronic surveys to draw in everybody. So everybody had some voice in helping to develop a new plan for how they were going to do digital within their organization. All the input was assembled into a bunch of what they called raw materials, a set of documents. It wasn't a plan, it was just we have heard, here's all the information we've gathered from everybody, it's publicly available. We're now starting to dissect this to come up with a simple, clear plan. And one of the things they did, having tried to go around the block with us a number of years, is they said, we are slowing it down, because one lesson they'd learned the hard way was they could roll out technology way faster than their people, including their leaders and managers, and perhaps especially their leaders and managers, way faster than they could actually absorb it and adopt it. So they said, we're going to slow this down quite a bit. We're going to reel a bunch of things in. We're going to start over with some things. We're going to have a steady pace to get this rolled out in a way that everybody can adopt it. And they also implemented a business planning cycle that emulated the regular business planning cycle. They said, look, our business has annual, quarterly, weekly meetings that keep the team focused. We're going to do that within this project as well. And the interesting thing is, for this particular organization, when COVID hit, they had to back up and do some replanning. And you can see one of my first pictures, if you're looking at the screen here. Over here was when they had done some planning a while back, and they had a lot of in-person contact. They said, we can't do that anymore. So they used digital tools to actually put the revised annual plan for digital together to do it better. Okay, so that's engaging your team, listening to the people that you work with. The next thing digital leaders do great is they make better decisions because they're data-driven decisions, right? Are you making mostly gut-level decisions or data-driven decisions? What does that look like? Of all places, we work with an accounting firm that when it came to sales and marketing, they were making a lot of decisions using their gut instead of their data, right? These are pretty number-driven people. So when asked, there was kind of broad agreement that, hey, about 80% of our new business is coming from referrals and only 20% from lead generation. And across everybody, people in a sales, what they call the business development function, marketing function, as well as all the different partners and senior managers, they just said, yeah, this is my gut. This is about right. This is what we're going to do. And they built their entire strategy around that metric of, we do great with referrals, not so good with lead gen, so we're going to focus a lot of our time and effort on doing more referral business. Well, at some point, the sales and marketing team got together and said, you know, we've got enough data from the past year to manually go in. So they didn't really have it inside of their CRM solution at this point, but they just manually went in and said, we can get the right people together who've worked on all the opportunities that come in and assign a category to each one of these to really kind of prove out how actually big of a difference is there between referral and lead gen traffic that turns into business for us. Well, it turned their expectations completely around. In fact, almost the exact opposite was true. Only a little over 20% of what they were getting was from referrals, and nearly 80% was coming from what they broadly called marketing, but all the lead generations, whether it was content marketing or events or whatever it was, they were actually getting way more new opportunities closed to them. Now, they did know, as they looked at those a little more closely, the referral ones tended to convert at a much higher rate, so they were much more successful with them. And it was probably that ease of onboarding them that were biasing their thinking. But as they looked at this, they said, we need to really change our strategy. We've been investing in the wrong things. We need to really blow out this new one. And by the way, when recently COVID hit them, they're actually able to now see in advance because they were making better data-driven decisions. They're really understanding their customers and their people and what was going on, that they could see that some industries were changing rapidly due to this. And so they're actually able to shift a lot of their business development resources to industries that looked like they were going to thrive and survive and do okay through this period. So they're actually kind of the envy of their marketplace right now because they've done better than many others. Now, there's also a simple way to think about making data-driven decisions. Every one of us has little bits of data about the people we engage with and the people we lead or are colleagues with every single day. And when leaders are trying to become digital, they often create more disruption rather than less if they're not careful, because interruptions are disruption. There's no such thing as a 1-minute interruption. Studies say it takes people 5 to 15 minutes to reestablish a flow if they're interrupted. But once you start adopting digital channels, you actually create an environment where you can interrupt people much more regularly without thinking about it than you ever did before, right? How many of you would walk into someone's office if they're on a phone call and just start talking to them? It's out of the question. You would never do it. But how many of you send an instant message to somebody when someone's status is set to red light, I'm busy right now, which may very well mean they're on a call or they're doing something else that requires a lot of focus? You wouldn't do it. So there's this whole idea of good digital managers and good digital leaders exercise good digital etiquette and good digital boundaries. And that takes some time, but it means looking at data too, understanding, just like a good leader is great at emotional intelligence and understanding body language, they need to be great at digital intelligence and understanding digital body language too. And that's a new thing that they have to learn. But if they don't learn it well, they actually can do more damage to their workplace than help while they're stumbling through it. So there's some good rules to have around that as well. The third area that I want to talk about where we're seeing a lot of leaders be successful is this idea of using digital to create new habits, right? You guys said, 100% of you said, we are doing more with digital, we're engaged more with digital because of COVID, or at least during this past 3 months, than we have been in a long time. Better or worse, we have gone from resisting digital to transforming digitally, and we hope that we're going to come out to a good place when we've done it. And I think there's an opportunity to do it well here, but there's also some potential risks of not doing so well if we're not careful. So what are some of the leaders doing here? When a distribution company was hit by COVID, they suddenly found that, first of all, their B2B customers, or mostly B2B focused, suddenly became way more difficult to win, right? They used to have the luxury of, they get a lead, they could quickly make a call or two or send an email or two, they could convert them and have a new customer. They also found their field sales team. So this was a team that was always out in front, pounding the pavement in front of clients and prospects day in and day out. All of a sudden, they're a home-based inside sales team overnight. And they had, by the way, never adopted CRM very well. So what did they do? They had to support their people in quickly creating some new habits. So the first thing they did with the images on the screen right now is they realized they no longer had the luxury of a huge volume of inbound leads where it's kind of like saying, you know, we're picking the low-hanging fruit. I think for them, it was so fast and furious. It was more like they were picking up the fruit that had fallen onto the ground all by itself and putting it in and saying, let's move on to the next thing. To all of a sudden not getting nearly as many leads and needing to make sure they were following up on those with a lot more discipline to get it done. So they adopted a sales cadencing automation to ensure at least 5 contacts were made to every incoming lead before they would give up. And it included things like immediate emails, making connections on LinkedIn and sending messages to that, scheduled and unscheduled calls, because they found out as they did this, some of their folks who reached out to them were more responsive to send me a meeting invitation and I'll be there. Others were never going to accept the meeting invitation, but they answer the phone when you pick it up. So they had a lot of things in that hopper that they worked through to try to make a connection, voicemail scripts and all that. And partial automation of that meant the reps were in control, but they could save time and steps to stay on top of their leads, right? So it didn't just do it all for them and throw it out there and clog the arteries of their to-do list with something that was overbearing. It gave them a lot of control, but it gave them structure so they could come in, they could structure their day, and they could make sure they were doing the things that were resulting in converting people into customers. And for the field teams, they developed an internal discipline around way better reports and meetings, because remember, this is a group who had not adopted very well at all, and suddenly they found themselves in an inside sales role with a lot of really bad data that they built up over many years, much of it incomplete. And so they said, first of all, we're going to do they call it a RODI assessment. RODI is an acronym which basically means data that's bad. And you can read it up there if you want to. We can chat about it towards the end if you have questions. But they basically said, we need to clean this up. We need to clean up our pipeline. We need to clean up our contact list. We need to clean up our email addresses. We need to take care of all this. So they built this assessment, this matrix. Then they built a set of dashboards that their manager reviewed with them on a weekly basis to keep each other accountable to going through and making contact, but creating a clean database so that they can now begin making these proactive outbound calls when they can't be feet on the street. Now, hopefully things will get back to normal before much longer. They'll be on the street again, but now they've created a whole new set of fresh, more usable data and a whole new discipline of adopting and using CRM to make a bottom line difference to the organization. Now, if you're an executive or a manager, you're the second or third most influential person to any other given person in your organization. What I mean by that is this: who's the most influential person in your organization? For any given person, it's the person sitting next to them, or virtually next to them anyway, right? Their colleague, their coworker, their peer. is always more influential, according to studies, than executives or managers. So the great thing with digital, if you're trying to influence a team, is you can reach out to those individuals in the trenches who have a lot of influence over others. Because if you influence them, you influence the entire organization. So these are super uncertain times, and your people are dying to hear from you. So good digital leaders are connecting with them, and that's where they are doing things like broadcasting, right? They're doing video, they're posting on the intranet, they're making comments on Teams, they have an internal blog or a microblog that they're using to get little updates out to everybody. They're complimenting people out loud. They're asking questions where they see conversations happening to draw people out and to learn new things, and they're answering questions as well. People see them as very engaged, and although if you've got a pretty large team or just a big distributed team and it's hard to connect with everybody, now your leaders can be seen as communicating regularly. And when people don't hear from you, they assume the worst. So even if it's bad, communicating that it's bad, but maybe not as bad as people think, is helpful. People want authenticity. They want to know you're connected. They want to know you're caring for them. And although leaders may be working harder than ever through these times to figure out what's next, the best ones are also communicating with their people, and they're using digital to do it because it's so much more effective than trying to just do one-off meetings with people all the time. All right, our fifth and final one is this idea of using digital to increase agility. Now, I'm not sure who in this photo I can relate to more, but both of these could benefit a lot by improving their agility right now, right? Darwin said, it's not the strongest or the smartest who survives, it's those who adapt to change the fastest. And look, we are living in the age of digital Darwinism. If you are not adapting and adopting digital to do what you're doing, you're not going to be agile. Here's how the leaders are using digital to adapt a little more quickly. So when the manufacturer found they couldn't meet anymore, they had to pivot really quickly. Now, the good news for this particular manufacturer is they were already in the habit of picking out a key metric to improve 2 to 4 times per year for each and every department. Everyone in the organization had a number, and the number changed with some level of frequency, 2 to 4 times a year. They call that number a SQUAG, a small, quickly attainable goal. But their current metric for one group was in-person visits. And what that meant was they knew that, hey, the more time we get face-to-face with our clients and prospects, the more sales we close. It's just a matter of numbers. The more we can kind of knock on doors, the better off we're going to do. Well, clearly in our world today, that wouldn't work. So they regrouped quickly, got the team together and said, we need to rethink what our quarterly or half-year metric is going to be for this group. And what they decided was it would be email replies plus connected calls. I am not prescribing that for you. This was their metric. Their business worked well with this. So they said it's not just the number of emails you send, and it's not just the number of dials you make, it's how many replies you get back from people that you email, and how many calls you make that you're actually able to connect with someone, whether it's an inbound call that you're receiving, then you obviously connected, or an outbound call where you actually talk to somebody. They configured their CRM to capture the metric. They configured Power BI to report on it, because now their team that could get together fairly frequently to talk couldn't get together at all. So then they took that Power BI metric and they put it into a Microsoft team channel to collaborate on, number one, making it visible as they did across all of their different teams, but number two, in creating a place where they could collaborate digitally about improving it. So they could see and converse with each other and with their managers on, how did you do this week? How can we improve it? What are the tricks you're learning as we try to do this new thing? How can we drive this number up? The red bar was their current performance on that metric when they started this process. The green was their goal for a sustained metric, and the blue is how they've been doing since they established this about 3 months ago. So you can see they've done pretty well, not always perfectly, but they've pretty much met their goal overall and are starting to move the organization. So digital made them more agile, but the way they adopted digital, not just digital for digital's sake, but the way they adopted it to say, let's set metrics, let's change metrics, let's pivot quickly, let's encourage each other and create more camaraderie and teamwork around this, not less, as we do this. Now that's one aspect of being more agile. But good digital managers, good digital leaders aren't just focused on using digital to make their teams and their organizations more agile. They're always focused on using the tools themselves, becoming more agile with using digital to get their jobs done better. And you may have seen this cartoon before, right? You may think, well, maybe that applies here, maybe it's not, maybe that's overstating the case a little bit. But remember our opening slide. Harvard Business Review has found evidence that strongly suggests digital literacy today is as fundamental to the future of business as the written word, as regular literacy has been in ages gone by, right? 10% plus in better revenue growth is a significant difference. Any business would be ecstatic about getting those kinds of results. So that simple cartoon is a somewhat real world scenario of if you're doing same things the same way, you are probably missing out on an opportunity that your competitors are using to accelerate way beyond you. You need to get on board with that and adopt early so you can experience success. So 5 things we talked about today, and if you know me, you probably know where I'm going. I like to keep these simple, I like to keep these consistent, and no matter how you look at it, the way we build relationships with digital really uses 5 different things. We started by talking about engaging the team, right? And as we talked about engaging, we really talked a lot about listening, right? Digital is a great tool for listening, and when you build your plan, you should also listen to the team and get them engaged in helping you to think through how can us as an organization, how can me as a leader actually help to adopt digital to make a bottom line difference. Next, we talked about making data-driven decisions. In other words, we've listened and we've gathered data to make decisions. Now, do we really understand the data that we've gathered? What are we going to do with that, with analytics, with BI, with artificial intelligence? How can we search it? How can we use social to understand this better, to actually ask simple questions and gain things out of it, and then distribute that knowledge across the organization? Third, we talked about this idea of creating new habits, right? So we've built a foundation of we've listened, we've gathered information, we've understood, we've made data-driven decisions. How do we put those decisions into action? How do we actually connect with the people that we work with, stand up new processes, take actions so that the things we're doing are actually bearing fruit? Fourth, we talked about increasing agility, right? We talked about this idea of how can we now know what our results are so we can continuously improve? And that's the fourth piece of this, knowing the results. Agility is not just about doing things fast. It's about, as Darwin said, adapting to a changing situation. You can't know what the changes are or have an idea of how to adapt if you don't know what results you're generating so that you can respond to a changing situation with agility. So listen, understand, connect, and know. Digital managers, digital leaders who are doing those things well, they're powered by luck, right? They're doing those 4 things consistently and well. But there is a 5th element, and we started with that element in this particular case. Listen, understand, connect, know. Luck, that is what you do. But the best digital leaders are just like the best business leaders in general. They're doing things with a sense of purpose. They know their why. They're not being random. They're not doing stuff because it's cool or has a lot of sizzle or because everyone else is doing it. They're doing it because they have a purpose for running their organizations. They have a purpose that they're trying to help their people move towards. They have an understanding of not just what they do, but why they do it. So what you do, that's luck. Why you do it, we call that good luck, doing luck for the right reasons. And people pick up on that. People absolutely know when they have purpose-driven leadership, and they tend to want to follow that more than just purely profit, bottom line driven leadership. And I am not saying the bottom line and profit is a bad thing. I'm saying it is an end, not the means. It is not the why, it is the what. And when you understand the why, you get more of the what. So I hope that made it simple for everybody. Lots of little case studies and examples in there. I do have a bunch of things for you if you're interested in learning more. Book on Amazon, The Luck Principle. If you'd like to grab a copy, feel free to do that. Several ebooks. CPR for CRM is one. So if you're struggling with getting people on board with your CRM solution, that's a great ebook. I'd be happy to send that to you. There's another one that we have called Digital Etiquette and Boundaries that you may be also be interested in. You see my email address there. If you just ping me on email and say, came to your session today, would love to get the resources, I'll make sure I get you links so you can go get those things. We've got a ton of others out there. In fact, one, if you're having trouble getting leadership to even adopt digital or consider digital, we've got a digital workplace ROI ebook that helps explain some of the returns on investment of going digital as well. And of course, this is what we do. So I'm happy to do the webinars. It's a free way we try to serve the community, but we're here to serve you and engage with you guys as well. If you're looking for help with planning or coaching or getting a leadership team more on board or implementing the technology, that's what we do for a living. We love doing what we do, and we love engaging with folks like you. So thank you all so much for coming today. I don't know if there have been any questions or not, but Lori, if there have, I'm glad to take them.
All right, fabulous, fabulous. So yes, great job, Jeff. Couple questions that have come through. I'm not sure the name of the asker, so if I'm not representing your question correct, let me know. Let's see. We're looking for any project examples that you could walk through, Jeff, or any kind of case studies that we could point people to on the concepts that you use today.
So there are a lot, and I tried to give you a few as we went through them. Probably the best thing is there are tons. I do tons of these sessions for user group, so I could give you some links to some other versions of this. I think I've done something called creating a people-centric business, and I've shared some case studies of those in there, in addition to the ones that you saw here today. I know I've done some others, so unfortunately I can't think of links right off the top of my head. But I'll be glad to post those, or you can email me and I'll get them to you.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Why don't you talk a little bit about the customer behavioral changes pre and current COVID environment? Can you talk to that a little bit, Jeff?
Yeah, it's been encouraging and discouraging. So as someone who has been trying to influence a lot of organizations to more fully embrace digital, and then to suddenly find that many are embracing it, ready or not. But unfortunately, what's often happening because of COVID is some organizations are moving so fast that they're making a lot of the mistakes that people who have been at it for years have kind of learned to avoid. So let me give you an example. I talked about CPR for CRM. I talked about 70% of our customers on average are in recovery. Those are typical things that happen. So people jump in and do things like say, oh my gosh, we need to start really embracing CRM because of this new situation. Let's set up a bunch of new dashboards. And then they have somebody put the dashboards together by working with maybe a sales manager, both of who are very smart people, but they don't necessarily speak the same language. And the dashboards wind up being extremely confusing, very difficult to navigate, and people wind up more fed up and frustrated than ever, particularly when they feel the urgency of needing to get in and do this well. A couple other real life examples, probably everybody's familiar with Microsoft Teams or similar products these days. So it's so easy. The good news about Microsoft Teams is it's so easy to deploy. The bad news about Microsoft Teams is it's so easy to deploy. So we work with one company who is in the energy sector, and their sales team set up a team for sales and a channel for every prospect they were chasing. And there were literally thousands of channels under this team. I might be exaggerating, but there were hundreds. It was a long list that they had to scroll through to find anything. It needed to be cleaned up. It was a huge mess. Another organization in health services turned on the ability for everybody to create teams. And they looked down as they got into COVID and said, we are creating over 250 new Microsoft Teams per month right now. Nobody could find anything. There's duplication all over the place. It created a very messy, unfriendly environment. So you still need good governance. You still need good rules of engagement to make this happen. So I think what's happening, unfortunately, is the pendulum of under adoption is swinging over towards the side of, I hate to say over adoption, because that's not what I'm trying to communicate, but maybe it's too rapid of an adoption. You still need to be measured and planned. As Harvard Business Review said, the best, most successful digital organizations, they have a clear digital vision and plan, and they're working it. And you can't get into a rush, or you're probably just going to make messes that might make business worse rather than better.
Okay, great, Jeff. Let's see, we have time for a couple more questions, so keep them coming in. Can you talk a little bit about, the comment is, my leadership doesn't believe digital is for them. How do I change their mind?
So not an easy challenge, and I wish I could tell you I had a formula that would make you successful every single time. Here's a couple of thoughts. First of all, I'd mentioned an ebook, so get that from me, and it's got the ROI in it. So most leadership teams are responsive to something if they can see a clear ROI. And if you look at that, you might even find examples called out that are very relevant to you. For example, crisis management. Organizations that are adopting digital well are doing much better with crisis communications management. What I mean by that is, if you're an organization has ever had something that was bad PR happen to you, organizations that have embraced digital tend to identify and respond to and deal with that much more quickly, and sometimes those messes never even catch the public eye anymore. That's one of many examples. So that's one approach. Another is consider something like bringing in someone to talk about something like this, for one thing. I do talks all the time on it, so full disclosure, I'm in the business, so I'll be a little bit biased about that, but that can help. But in lieu of that also, part of what we often do that you might be able to do too is what we call a visionary demo. And that can take a lot of different forms, so you got to know your team well to know how that will best be received by them. But you need someone who speaks the language of whoever you're trying to convince, that's CFO, that's CEO, and show them, here's a vision, here's a picture of how we do this today. Here's a picture of how this could look if we do it in the future. You're telling a story, in essence. So numbers are impactful to leaders, stories are impactful to leaders. So if you can tell them a story, it doesn't have to be a make-believe story or something like that, but just a story of, here in real life is what we're doing right now. So for one organization right now, what we're doing is, they're a bank, and they say, we don't know if we want to do this digital transformation or not. Now we've got the ear of the head of IT, we've got the ear of the head of marketing, so we're working together with them to present to their president, who's the one who's not quite sure. And we're able to find one specific process for them where we say, the way you manage pipelines today is you have these 5 lead referral forms on your intranet that are PDF forms. And so someone has to find the form, find the right forms, the 5 different types of things, fill out the form, attach it to an email and send it to somebody. Someone else has to open that form, rekey that back into an email, send it to the rep who's in charge of it. That rep can track it any way they want. Maybe it's in Excel or Outlook or wherever they track it, and you hope that they follow up with it. And here's this Excel reporting tool you key it all into. Now, here's a picture-by-picture playback of how that can look like in a new digital workplace. And we know the story is compelling. We know when we look at it, they will have to say, we're going to have way fewer things falling through the cracks. We're going to have way higher quality. We're going to have much higher productivity. We're going to be way more responsive to our clients. And it's a better looking interface that our people are going to be engaged in. Those are the kinds of things. If you can find some case studies like that and put it in a story format, plus the numbers, you help to convince your leadership that, okay, I can really see how if I were somebody having to get this process done, then this is how I would do it. And know your leadership. If you say this person came out of a finance background or a sales background, well, what are the processes they did earlier in their career that you can illustrate to them? So in their head, they will say, yes, I identify with the pain you're talking about in that process. And yes, I understand the solution that you're offering. That's a great return. Let's move forward with it. Again, can't promise it's going to work every time, but there's some tactics you can use.
All right, great. Besides Teams, are there any other tools that are frequently deployed for communication across different companies for digital adoption?
There are a ton of them. In fact, Teams in some ways was kind of late to the game. Now we're kind of a Microsoft first practice, so I don't know a ton of details about all the other ones, but in the Microsoft world, Yammer is also a very popular tool. Can be a little confusing because it does a lot of similar things to Teams. So if you're thinking about one or both of the other, make sure you understand your strategy before you deploy those. There's another one, it's got the hashtag in front of it, Lori. Maybe you remember what I'm talking about. I can never remember the name of it. Teams is kind of built off the same principle. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's a very popular tool. I'm actually going to do a little search here. Slack, that's it. So Slack is a very well-known competitor to Teams. It was out before Teams, and it kind of billed itself as it's going to end email communication because this is a better way of communicating. And if you read some of the stuff about Teams, it kind of claims the same thing, at least reducing the load on email. So Slack is a non-Microsoft tool, has a lot of things in common with Teams. If you use both of them, you'd probably say they're more similar than they are different from each other. And I've talked to some users of Slack who love it and think it is much better than Teams. And of course, I talked to people who feel the other way about Teams. So tons and tons of tools out there. Those are a couple. By the way, at one point, I showed you a picture of a remotely hosted session where you could see kind of the live session where someone had stickies all over the wall, and this looked like virtual stickies on a wall. We use that tool to facilitate sessions when we're doing planning and goal setting and prioritizing and stuff like that for our clients. It's called Mural, M-U-R-A-L. If you go to mural.ly, like Mural-y, or I think even just mur.ly, you'll get to it. And it's kind of like this big whiteboard or canvas with ways you can put stickies on it, and you can do voting and all sorts of stuff. Very flexible, not too difficult to use either. We've worked with people across all sorts of job functions who seem to get it. The only ones who seem to struggle are the ones who might have vision problems and might not quite know how to zoom in and zoom out to see stuff a little more close up. But it seems to work very, very well for that kind of thing.
Okay, great, Jeff. All right, we have a couple minutes left here. I'm going to look for quick raised hands to see if anybody would like to unmute your line, and we can definitely do so. Real quick, the Mural tool that you talked about, I'm getting a question if you could share your screen on that. I don't know if we have time to do that today, looking at the time. Is that something quick you can do, Jeff, or no?
Do they want to see it running or just see the picture I showed of it earlier?
We'll give them a moment to comment here back to us.
So there it is right there on the picture I was showing. Let me see if I can bring it up super quick. It'll probably only take me a second to do it.
Okay, great. While you're bringing it up, I'm just going to kind of do some closing comments here. But yes, as we close down, know that we did record today's session, and we'll get the recording posted to our content library here in a couple hours. So look for an email to come to you directly with that link if you registered for the event. Okay, back to you, Jeff.
Okay, so there is Mural. For those of you who are interested in seeing it, we just did a session yesterday with it. This is actually a rather old session we did. And what we do is we use PowerPoint with it. So we'll kind of be presenting, then we'll switch over to Mural. Laura, you can't see my screen, right?
Yep, correct, I can.
Okay. And we put some of the slides in there, so you can copy and paste graphics in here. So just using my scroll bar, it's really easy for me to scroll in and out. And then I just click and drag to move around the mural. If I want to, I might have subject headers here, and I might say, well, I want to add a new sticky here. I just click under it, start typing, click under it again, start typing. As the person who's facilitating, I can click and drag these easily. I can also say, oh, you know what? We need to have a voting session. So I'm going to start a voting session. Everyone's going to get 7 votes. I'm going to call this something. Click next. It's going to give people the ability to begin voting on things. So you can see the more votes I cast for something, the bigger the little circle on it gets. And now you can see, oh, I can't vote anymore. I was only given 7 votes. So lots of little tools like that. It comes with a lot of templates for different, more standardized business processes, business analyst types of projects you would do together, and that kind of stuff. So that's the quick intro.
Hey, Jeff, real quick, is there a cost for this event or tool?
Well, Alexa just said, I don't know that. I'm not sure what triggered that. So yes, there is a cost. I think there is a 30-day trial period. We do pay an annual subscription for it. And then we can bring our clients into it on a one-time basis to do stuff with them. So we pay for a small group of users for just our organization, and then guests are free for about 30 days. So you could do something like that, but let's say, if a guest comes back after the 30 days, then they have to pay, right? So you can't keep using the same email address to log in after that period of time. So I can't remember the cost, unfortunately, but it's not.
Okay, yep, nope, all good. All good, all right. Let's go ahead and wrap then. Jeff, as always, thank you so much for presenting today. We love having you present. Fabulous job.
Thank you so much, Lori. Thanks everybody for attending. And do remember to, sorry, I took my email address down, but you probably saw it. Hit me up if you'd like any of the resources I mentioned, and I'd love to hear from you.
All right, great. Yes, and do. If you have questions, reach out to Jeff. You can always continue conversations in our open forums as well, or reach out to me directly, Lori@crumud.com, Laurie. All right, as we close down, you're going to receive a quick survey that's going to pop up from the GoToWebinar tool. Always great to get feedback as well as give feedback, right? So there's a comment section. Any comments on the presentation today or any other topics that you'd like to see the UG promote or find an expert to share information with you on, please let us know. We look forward to seeing you back here on an upcoming event. If you have any questions, always reach out. I appreciate you being here today, Jeff. Many, many thanks.
Thank you as always, Lori. Talk to everybody soon. Bye-bye.
Sounds great. Yep, we'll see you all back here real soon. Take care.